Hi, and welcome to this week's edition of Orangeline. I'm Rena Murphy.
And I'm Zach Rocky. For this week's first story, Kelsey Epperson took a look at voter registration here at Baker University's campus.
With the 2008 presidential election nearing soon, many Baker University students are pushing to get their peers involved. Students have been registering to vote for the November election in the Harder Union. Students who have worked the registration tables explained to me why they are stressing the importance of registering to vote in Baldwin City.
I don't know, it's just, it's one of the most important things you can do as a person. One of the things about America is you're those freedoms that you're given, and this is one of the most important ones. And if you're gonna, this person is going to be in charge of our country for the next 4 or 8 years, and where we're at right now, that's not something you can take lightly. So get your voice heard, and that's one of the great things if you go somewhere else that you may not get that opportunity. So
sophomore Dani Weimholt says she is currently enrolled in an elections and campaigns class and an American politics class, and it is required for her to be active in voter registration and keep up with the elections. She expresses her views on students registering to vote.
I think it's of the utmost importance. I think everybody should. I don't see a reason why somebody shouldn't. We can make a difference. I actually listened to Michelle Obama the other day on a conference call with the Students for Barack Obama, and she mentioned that in the last election in 2004, only 50% of eligible voters between the ages of 18 and 24 registered to vote, and even less voted. So that's a big difference we could potentially make. We should register and we should vote.
Senior Jason Mock has been actively involved in local politics for several years. He is currently on board with Baker University professor Tony Brown and his campaign for the Kansas House of Representatives 10th District.
I'm from Baldwin, and so I have a lot of connections with all of the politics that are going on here in town. I've known Dr. Brown. I've run against him for political office, and I've worked with him to get him elected for political office. And so I'm working with his campaign to register voters.
Mock stresses his feelings towards voter registration.
It's hugely important. I mean, our system is set up on people voting, and especially in this election and elections where there are local issues going on, it's very important that people vote where they live and get registered to vote in those areas.
In Kansas, the deadline to register to vote is October 20th, so don't miss your chance. Students will be here in the Union through fall break. I'm Kelsey Epperson, KNBU-TV.
Thanks for that. Matt also had the opportunity to sit down with Dr. Grant and talk about this year's economy crisis.
Thanks, Zach. I'm Matt Quandt. I'm here with Professor of Economics, Aln Grant. Thanks for coming in today.
My pleasure.
I'm glad we got a chance to sit down. A lot of Americans are aware we're in a financial crisis right now, but don't understand what's happening or how it happened. Will you try to explain it for us?
I'd be happy to. The origin of the crisis is essentially banks making loans to people that couldn't afford to repay them. And it's sort of tempting to say that this is really the bank's fault, but as it turns out, it's really probably not. A long time ago, 40, 50 years ago, the federal government created two organizations, Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, and they are designed to allow banks to make a loan to you for a house, and then the banks can package up that loan and resell it to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae in turn repackage that, and they sell them to large investment banks like Lehman Brothers and Goldman Sachs and Solomon Smith Barney, etc. And so we found ourselves in sort of a weird situation in the 1990s where interest rates were very low, and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac were buying up lots of loans, and it's hard to fault the bankers for making loans to you who can't afford to repay your mortgage when they know that they can just turn around and shunt that risk off to somebody else. And so that's sort of the situation that started the crisis. The crisis got worse last year as the economy started to slow down a little bit, and we noticed default rates on mortgages ticking up. And ordinarily this would affect the banks that made the loans, but the banks had already sold them to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and they'd passed them along further to these gigantic Merrill Lynch type investment banks. And so what we see is this segment of society not paying back their loans, and it's causing a whole house of cards to collapse. It's really started some dominoes tumbling.
And it has.
It has.
So this has caused Congress to start debating about a bailout plan, which everyone's hearing about in the news. Will you explain that a little bit? Tell us what that money's going to do and where that money's coming from.
Well, that money comes from you in the form of your tax dollars, I'm afraid. Mm-hmm. And the money is going to you also if you're one of the people who probably can't afford to repay your loan, or if you happen to have some financial interest, own stock, or have lent money to one of these investment banks, for example. The bailout really is sort of a twofold thing. First, the Federal Reserve, which is our nation's central bank, stepped in, and they've provided some extra money to help combine some of the failing banks with some banks that were on better footing. So, for example, last summer, Bear Stearns is one of the first investment banks to collapse, and the Federal Reserve stepped in and gave J.P. Morgan a sweetener and said, listen, will you take over this failed investment bank? The big bailout that happened last week, the $700 billion bailout, is a little bit different animal in that the federal government is now going to be buying up some of these bad loans. So if you haven't made your payments in the last 6 months, all of a sudden you're going to find yourself indebted to the federal government. And the government's using your tax dollars to do that, but hopefully if you start making your payments again, or if these creditors in default start making their payments again, you'll see some of that come back.
That's great. Well, closer to home, how is this going to affect Baker students and citizens of Baldwin?
A marked impact on Baker students and citizens of Baldwin. And the first thing that we're going to notice is that the real estate market is going to dry up. We've lost Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, at least for the time being. They're insolvent, and the federal government's having to bail them out too. And so they're not buying these big blocks of mortgages anymore. And what that means is if Baldwin State Banks makes a house loan to me, they can't pass it off anymore, so they're going to start pouring into every nook and cranny of my financial existence, making sure that I'm actually going to be able to repay the loan. So it's going to be harder to get loans, and this is what we're observing now is that banks have lots of money, but they're being very cautious about lending it out. This is going to affect you in several ways. Number one is they're going to be more cautious about all of their lending practices. They're likely to give you a little bit closer scrutiny for student loans. Mm-hmm. The place that it's really going to hurt you is when you get out of here in another year or two and you're ready to start your life and buy your first house, and you're going to find out that either no funds are available for you or that the rate of interest is pretty high.
That's great. I appreciate you coming in and clarifying things for the viewers.
It's my pleasure.
Always a pleasure. So I hope you come in sometime soon. I'm Matt Quandt, and send it back to the studio.
Now we're going to take a look at some new freshmen of the week.
Hi, my name is Taylor Copp. I am from Lawrence. I came to Baker because they had a molecular biology program, which they didn't offer at some of the other schools. I'm a pledge of the Kappa Sigma fraternity, and one of the things I like about Baker is definitely the fraternity life and getting to meet new people.
We're going to take a quick commercial break, but stay tuned because we have more stories coming up on Orangeline.